What's up guys and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Hey, how you doing? If you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology, and maybe you're just here because you want to see the aftermath of Odysseus finally stringing the bow and exactly how he's going to kill all of the suitors, well, then this is not only the video for you, this is also the channel for you. You guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you know every single time I post in the future. But on topic of today's video, and as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about Book 22 of Homer's Odyssey. If I could summarize Book 22 into a one sentence, it would be that after stringing the bow, Odysseus slaughters all of the suitors, which I am so thrilled that we're finally at this point in the book. You guys know that I have been waiting to describe some gory deaths because if you watch my Iliad series, I do enjoy going through those. I think those are the most, oh god, this sounds really bad, but they are the funnest part to describe, I'm not gonna lie. In these videos, like, they're always a good time. So on that note, I do want you guys to know that right now is a trigger warning because there are quite a few really icky deaths in this book. So if you are squeamish, then please either don't watch the video or watch with care because I don't want to get in trouble by YouTube. So I'm warning you now that there are lots of little moments. There's also a moment at the end, which is definitely questionable because the women also are killed along with the suitors, the women who are disloyal to Odysseus in his absence, and that is quite icky as well. So just be aware of that, then watch this with care. And yeah, and saying that, let's get into the narrative. So I left you in the last book, Odysseus has just strung the bow and shot the arrow through all of the axe heads, and all of the suitors are watching him being like, we're so screwed. So cut to this book and we're picking up in the exact same moment. Odysseus now strips himself of his rags, he throws them all on the ground, he puts all of the arrows on the ground as well, and he announces to the suitors that even though the test is finished, there are still some things left unhit. And you know that he's obviously talking about the suitors and you're just like, oh, let's go! First man that he hits, as we know because Homer told us in the last book, is Antinous, and Odysseus picks up an arrow and shoots Antinous straight in the throat, right? And we have this moment where Antinous gets hit. He then takes like a breath in and all of this blood comes out of his nose, and as that happens he then kicks the table in front of him over, so food flies everywhere, cups fly everywhere, wine flies everywhere, and he falls back and he's like, ah, dead. The suitors obviously are shook by this, and so they stand up and they're just like all in uproar, and they're like, how could you kill the best of the Ithacans, blah blah blah, all of this sort of stuff. And because of their outburst, Homer says that that alone has sealed all of their dooms. Not that any of them had a chance, but that alone, Homer's like, nice one. Odysseus calls back to them and he basically says that all of them are brave talking to him like that. He's like, you have bled my house dry, you have ravished my women, you have attempted to woo my wife, and therefore you've sealed your doom, for your next to be a nuisance. Obviously, all the suitors bricks, to say it lightly. Eurymachus is the only one who's brave enough to stand up in this moment, and he does exactly what we would expect Eurymachus to do, where he stands up and he says that basically all of them have been corrupt by Antinous. Where you're like, I'm sorry, are we going to ignore the fact that you corrupted Melanthius and Melantho, and we have proof for that throughout this book? But no, it is all Antinous' fault. And by the way, those two people are the only two that we have like actively written down. Think of all the other people that Eurymachus has up in this process, and yet nope, again, Antinous' fault. He also then says that he understands Odysseus' point of view in regards to them, you know, eating him out of house and home, and he's just like, okay, so you know what we'll do is that we'll give you like 20 oxen and all of this like bronze and gold to make up what we've eaten, and then we will also tax the people of Ithaca so that then they can pay back all of the things that we've eaten in the palace, which like, what the did the other people do? But anyways, he says all of this stuff and he sort of closes off by being like, I can't blame you for your rage. Odysseus isn't taking any of this shit, and he literally starts his speech by being like, no, Eurymachus! And again, he just tells all of them that he's gonna kill them. He's like, there's nothing that you can say that's gonna make me not kill you. And so therefore all of the men could either fight or they can flee, but either way they're gonna die. Like regardless of if they tried to flee, they're still gonna die. As if all the suitors weren't terrified enough, now they're even more terrified. And again, only Eurymachus is brave enough to actually stand up and not only talk to the suitors, but again, still talk to Odysseus. Eurymachus tells all of the suitors to pick up a sword and to push over the table so that you can use them as like a barricade. Because remember that Odysseus has like a bow and arrow, right? So he's like, push him over, stand behind it, guard yourselves, have a sword just in case he comes close enough. He also says that if they can get one of them, only one of them has to get out of the palace in order to sound an alarm among Ithaca, and then that way hopefully they can get more reinforcements, which then obviously Homer then writes down and just says, yeah, this is all like brave talk for somebody that's gonna die. Literally in this moment, Eurymachus stands up and tries to run at Odysseus with his sword. Again, Odysseus has a bow and arrow, so obviously this man pulls back his arrow, his string thing, whatever the correct term for that is, pulls it back, fires it at Eurymachus, and it actually lodges right into Eurymachus's chest. And I think it goes on like a downward sort of angle, because when he shoots Eurymachus, it ends up going into his liver, and that's sort of where it stops in his body. And Eurymachus obviously is dead. In fact, he has this very drawn out death where like he drops his sword and he stumbles back and he's holding onto the bow and he trips over this table that's behind him, right? Because again, all the people have like moved the tables over to be barricades. Trips over one of them. Food, wine, everything goes everywhere, and his feet are in the air as his forehead like slams against the ground. We do get all of that detail in the book. And the little part in me that somebody is going to report me one day for these, but the little part of me was just like, thank God Eurymachus died this way. You know, his feet are like twitching as he's dead on the floor and bleeding out. That sounds really dark on my part, but again, when you've read this whole book and this man has been nothing but rude, you're like, he deserved it. The next person to attempt to attack Odysseus is actually Amphinomus, and Amphinomus rushes at him with his sword, but Odysseus doesn't actually turn around in time, and it's Telemachus who gets Amphinomus, and he shoots his spear straight into Amphinomus's chest. Obviously, Amphinomus dies on the spot, and Telemachus is pretty proud of himself, but he doesn't go over to pick up his spear out of the body because he's terrified that somebody else is going to try, as he's doing this, and kill him. So he's like, better just leave it. Telemachus instead runs over to Odysseus and says that he's going to go to the storeroom to go and get more armor and more weapons for everybody. And Odysseus likes this idea, and he's just like, yeah, if you go and do that, then you can hand some out to Eumaeus and to the cowherd as well, so that all of us will be better fit to fight. And Telemachus is like, great, and he runs off to the storeroom. We get a whole description of the storeroom. It's far too long to include in this episode, but he does go to the storeroom, gets everything, comes back, everybody like arms themselves with everything, and even Odysseus picks up 2 spears once he had fired his last arrow. So all of them are very prepared for battle now in this moment. As they're doing this, Odysseus does notice that there's a small door on the side of the hall. Well, notice he knows that it's there, right? There's like this sort of way of getting out of the palace via this teeny tiny door. Teeny tiny, as if it's Alice in Wonderland. There's a door, is what I'm trying to say. And Odysseus then looks to Eumaeus and he says, you have to go and guard that door, because no doubt the suitors are going to try and escape that way. And as far as I'm aware, we didn't actually lock that one. So Eumaeus is like, cool, no problem. As this is happening, Agelaus, one of the suitors, he does also notice this side door, and he looks at all the other suitors and he's like, yo, you know what we can do is that we can get one of you to go out that way. You can crawl outside, sound the alarm, get more reinforcements in, and then we won't all be killed. But the goat herd, Melanthius, knows the palace really well, and he says to Agelaus that that's actually a terrible plan, because he's like, not only is that whole corridor very cramped, but also the way to get out is very small, and so it's going to be really hard. Nobody probably is going to be able to do it. We should just cut our losses and not even try. Instead, he suggests that actually he's going to go and get armor for them from the storeroom, because obviously there's none around, which is why the suitors have been kind of useless up until this point, only having the armor that they have on them in order to attack Odysseus and his men. So Melanthius is like, don't worry, I'm going to go to the storeroom. Now you think as the reader like, this useless person is going to go up to the storeroom, he's going to be locked out because he thinks everything is that easy. And actually, when he goes up, I'm laughing, but it's not actually that funny. But he goes up to the storeroom and the door has been left ajar. And so he can actually go in, he grabs all this armor and all of these weapons and he brings them down to the suitors. And Odysseus is watching this and he's now nervous, right? Because now they're outnumbered and they have the same amount of weapons on each team, but they have less people with Odysseus, more with the suitors. So Odysseus is like, what the is going on? In fact, he thinks that somebody has just tipped off the suitors and just given them the weapons. And actually Telemachus has this moment of being like, no, wait, that was me. I definitely left the door ajar because I just like didn't think that they were gonna go up there, so that's my bad. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't necessarily the goat herd that hid all the weapons. They could just go in and get them. Which, useless, Telemachus. What? He does end this by trying to redeem himself though to Odysseus, and he's like, but I do think it was the goat herd. And again, you're reading this and you're just like, it's still your fault, whether it was the goat herd or not, it's still you. And as Telemachus and Odysseus are even having this conversation, Melanthius, the goat herd, goes back up to the storeroom to get more and you're reading it like, someone, go close the goddamn door. And thank God Eumaeus notices. So Eumaeus notices him going up and he runs over to Odysseus and he calls him this infernal nuisance, which I think is the best description of the goat herd that we have up until this point in the book, that I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I would agree. At this point, he's annoying. So Eumaeus asks Odysseus what he should do, whether he should go and follow him up and stop him up there, or whether he should, let him come down to the hall, have Odysseus kill him, or if he should go up, maybe bring him back down to Odysseus, whatever. He just basically gives Odysseus all these different options and says, which one should I do? Odysseus then gives Eumaeus instructions to follow Melanthius up to the storeroom and tells Eumaeus to bring the cowherder with him. So it's 2 against 1, right? And he tells them that what they should do is go up there, beat him up, beat up the goat herd, and then to tie him to a column, not so that he's like hung or anything like that, but just tie him to a column so he's still alive, he's beaten to a pulp, and he can just you know, hang there and think about what he's done, basically. Eumaeus nods, he takes the cowherd with him, and they go up to the storeroom and do exactly that. After they've done that, and we get a long description of what they do and the taunts that they yell at him, like they call him Your Highness at one point when he's up there and, you know, tied to the column and all of this. But then they go back downstairs to assist Odysseus in the whole, you know, slaughter thing. Bear in mind, it's the four of them. It's the two animal herders, Odysseus and Telemachus, against still a lot of the suitors that are left. They realize that they're sort of at a disadvantage, and Athena comes down in the form of Mentor to stand on the four of them side. Four of them side? Can you even say that? Whatever. Odysseus knows full well that this is Athena, and yet still addresses Athena as Mentor and says, please help us and please rescue us. It's now a matter of life or death. Which obviously Athena likes the sound of because she loves being gassed up. Across the hall, though, we have Agelaus, who is now taking charge of the suitors. And Agelaus gets up in front of them. He sees Mentor and he yells at Mentor, not realizing obviously that it's Athena. He tells Mentor in this moment that he has been tricked by Odysseus and Telemachus to not fight on the suitors' side and instead to fight on their side. He says he's basically going to pay for it, and is just like, once we kill Odysseus, we're also going to kill you, and we're going to put all of your land and all of your possessions in amongst all of Odysseus' stuff, and then we're going to share it out between all of us, and we won't even let your wife and your daughter or any woman in your family step outside again. Which, don't we think that's going a little far, Agelaus? But like, okay. Homer does note that these are naked threats anyways, because he's just like, Agelaus is gonna die, as are all of the suitors, so it's not even a problem. And Mentor, Athena, has this moment where she turns to he, which one am I referring to her as? We'll go with Mentor. So Mentor turns to Odysseus and says, where is the man who was fighting in Troy for 9 years for Helen non-stop? Where is that soldier now? And obviously Odysseus is like, she's right. And then Mentor, Athena, turns into a swallow and then goes to sit on like a super high beam in the hall to like watch down on everything that's happening. Agelaus then turns to the remaining very strong suitors, and he says that all of them, that there's 6 of them in total, they should all fire their spears at the same time at Odysseus and his men, because then all of them will die at the spot, and even if one of them misses, then probably the other spears are going to hit them anyways. However, when they do this, obviously Athena is like, ha ha ha, not on my watch. And she sends them all scattering, so none of them hit any of them. Odysseus then tells all of his men to attack all of the suitors at the same time, and hopefully they will kill all of them. So I made a note of this because I wasn't going to remember who killed who. Odysseus kills Deoptolemus in this moment. We then have Telemachus, who kills Euryades. Eumaeus kills Elatus, and the cowherd kills Pisander. We then have a moment where Odysseus goes to pick up the armor. A bunch of them go to pick up all of the weapons. They then bring them back to where they're standing on their side of the hall. They recuperate for a hot second, and then they go back in for a secondary attack. But in this little moment, they do have some of the suitors attack them. So no fatalities happen, obviously. But in this little interim, before they retaliate, we have the suitors who attack again, and we have this guy. Again, I still don't know how to say this guy's name because no one is helping me. Please, Greek people. So this guy then attacks Telemachus, and it doesn't really do anything. It just kind of nicks his wrist at one point, but it still, you know, falls behind him. And this other guy does attack Eumaeus, but it goes over his shoulder, and it nicks his shoulder again, but it lands behind him. He's fine. The second attack, again, I had to write this down because there are just too many names in this moment. So the second attack, Odysseus hits Eurydamas, Telemachus hits Amphimedon, wherever the stress is in that name, but that guy is hit down. Eumaeus then hits Polybus, and then the cowherd hits this guy again, right? The guy that tried to nick, what's his face, Telemachus just now. All of them are dead. And in fact, when the cowherd kills the guy whose name that I can't say, right? When he goes over to him, he says, you can keep that spear as a guest gift, like the one that you gave Odysseus when you threw the ox hoof at him. Remember how that happened a couple of books ago? So like, yeah, now he's basically saying, yourself, because you did that, you can have this. Odysseus then kills Agelaus. He runs him through with the spear. It's not in detail. And then we have Telemachus kill this other guy who we haven't even had mentioned throughout the whole thing, so I'm not even going to mention him now. He kills another guy. And they just keep going until all of them are dead. Like literally the whole floor is awash with blood, and it's icky and it's sticky and it's blood, but also a great moment. So one of the last guys who's left alive is this guy called Leodes. I'm pretty sure. How else would you say that? It's spelled like this. Anyway, so he's one of the last guys who's alive, and he actually goes to supplicate Odysseus, like by hugging his knees and pleading to him, and he's like, have mercy on me. And he basically says that he hasn't done anything really bad in the palace, and he's just saying that he's totally innocent and all of this sort of stuff. But Odysseus is like, okay, you say that you were the prophet of the suitors, you say you were just here to like say prophecies and all of this sort of stuff, and yet you were still in the house, you were still encouraging them, you were still eating all of my food, and you probably were praying to the gods that I wouldn't return so that maybe Penelope might choose you. For that alone, even though you weren't a complete you're still gonna die. And so Odysseus reaches down onto the floor, because when Agelaus died, he then dropped his sword. So Odysseus picks up this sword and he chops the guy's head off, just like smack bang in the moment. He's like, nope, you can die. Now Odysseus then looks around the room and he's looking for like any more signs of life, right? And he notices this one guy who's still alive, and it's Phemius. Do you guys remember the bard who's come up? He's popped up a bunch in this story, actually. So the bard is still alive, and the bard is literally backing into the doorway, and he's holding onto his lyre in front of his chest, and he's like, what the have I got myself into? And so he too goes to supplicate Odysseus, and he just says that he wasn't even part of the suitors' gang. He was literally just the singer. And he says that actually if Odysseus kills him, it's not going to be good for him, because he's somebody who sings the words of the gods, he sings the stories of the immortals, and so therefore it's going to look really bad on Odysseus if he kills Phemius. And Phemius is even like, Telemachus can vouch for me, I swear to God I haven't done anything. Luckily for Phemius, Telemachus does stand up in this moment, and he looks at his dad and he just says, look, actually Phemius has done nothing, like he is totally innocent, you shouldn't kill him, nor should you kill Medon. So he then says how Medon also was an innocent party, and how Medon had done nothing but tried to help him and Penelope, and how Phemius was part of this group as well. But he does say, I don't know if Medon's still alive though, because I can't see him, but if he is still alive, don't kill him. If he's already dead, then like, well, didn't like him that much anyways. But Medon, hearing his name, he pipes up in the corner, right? So he's been hiding underneath the chair, and he sort of like looks out, and he's just like, oh my God, me? And he runs over to Odysseus, and again, he's like, have mercy on me, Odysseus, I haven't done a goddamn thing, I swear to God. And Odysseus tells both of the men that he's not going to kill them, and that they're fine, they're totally going to survive, but he tells them both to go outside because he has some like household chores to attend to, which we'll get to in a hot second, because they're not like, they're just not household chores. He says, I've got things to do here, go stand outside and wait for me out there. And the two men are like, cool, and so then they leave. Odysseus then tells Telemachus to go and get Eurycleia. So Telemachus has to walk over to the door, right, where Eurycleia is guarding it from the other side, and all the women are weaving. He like knocks on the door, and he's like, hello, Eurycleia, Odysseus would like to see you. And so then Eurycleia comes out, and she then comes into the hall, and she just sees, you know, a bloodbath. And Odysseus is like in the middle of it. He's literally scattered in blood, and Eurycleia's not fazed by this whatsoever. She's just like, oh, the great Odysseus, the king is home, he's killed all the suitors, thank goodness. Odysseus just asks her for a report of all of the women who have been disloyal to him and what they've done and all of this. And so Eurycleia kind of explains it to us, just being like, there are 50 women, and of these 50 women, these people f***ed up and all of this sort of stuff. Odysseus then tells her to go and get these women and to bring them out into the hall. And Eurycleia's like, cool, I'll go do that, and then I'll go tell Penelope that, you know, you're down here and you've killed all the suitors. And Odysseus is like, well, let's just wait until we've cleaned this up, and then you can go tell Penelope. Which again, I think is a really smart choice on his part. So Eurycleia goes to get all of the women. They then come out, and Odysseus orders all of them to clean up the room, right? To clean up all of the dead bodies, all of the blood, everything. He basically gives them sponges, and even Homer says in this moment he forces them to do it. Like, this is an order. This is not like a nice suggestion that he's like, you know, if you guys have the time. He's like, no, scrub the shit out of this place because I need it to be clean. Because to be fair, he's not going to do it. He's the king. He just slaughtered all of the princes. Someone's got to clean up that mess. It might as well be the people who were rude to him. So all of the women do this. They're like crying as they do it. It's really rough, but they make the place spotless. And when they do, they are then encouraged to go out into the courtyard. So they all walk out into the courtyard. We've got all these women, and that is when I'm triggering warning again. Triggering warning? I'm giving you a trigger warning again, okay, because this is rough. Telemachus and the men are outside, and what they do is they then hoist up this this cord that's used for boats, and they hoist it up far enough that no toes are going to touch the ground, right? And then one by one, they hang every single one of the women. Like, as all of the other women are watching, they just line them up. So not only is it really rough for the women themselves, who are obviously being hung, you know, that's like a terrible way of being killed, but all of the other women have to watch their friends being hung as well, and then just like untied from the noose and put down, and then another one goes up and another one goes up, and that is how Odysseus kills all of the women who were disloyal to him. Now you might be wondering, what happened to the goat herd? Did he die amongst all of the suitors? No, he dies right now. So the punishment that the goat herd gets is actually the punishment that we hear Echetus would have given to anybody. So this makes me question any classers who know the answer to this. Is Echetus just more so like, oh, here's a bad king and what a bad king would do, or here's what a scary king would do, or here's like the worst punishment that could happen? I don't know, but it's just funny that then we get the same punishment here. And if you've forgotten what that was, or if you didn't watch that book, that the punishment the goat herd gets is that he has his nose and his ears lopped off, and then his genitals are cut out from the root, and they are thrown to the dogs to eat raw. And not only that, but then the men are so caught up in killing the goat herd and just like, you know, punishing Melanthius for basically them over massively and for being rude to Eumaeus, that then his hands and his feet are also chopped off. So that is how Melanthius, the goat herd, dies. Once they've all done that though, they then just pack it up and they go back into the house. Odysseus then finds Eurycleia and he asks her to bring him things to like fumigate the house with, because obviously it smells like death in there. And so he's like, can you bring me some sage or something like that so that I can like burn it and the house will be like really nice. And Eurycleia is like, well, maybe I should bring you some clothes first. And obviously Odysseus is like, well, no, I just asked you for to fumigate the house, so can you give me that first and then you can bring me all of the clothes? And so Eurycleia is like, I guess so, fine. And so then she brings some stuff to fumigate the house, and then she goes up to wake up Penelope. And that is how the book ends. So finally, guys, finally, all of the suitors are dead. I'm absolutely thrilled to get through that book and to finally not have to keep describing these irritating as suitors. Thank the Lord. So thank you guys for tuning into this book. Next book is actually a very important book. It's one of my favorite books. It's a lot of people's favorite books because finally we have Penelope speaking to Odysseus in Odysseus' true form and not as a beggar. And it's the time when they get reunited and it's so cute. So that's what we're in store for with book 23. But thank you guys again, and we'll be seeing you next time with all of that stuff here on Moan Inc. We'll see you then.